Hello, welcome. I'm astrologer Patrick Arundell. Today I'm going to do a deep dive video on the transit of Mercury through the sign of Cancer, which begins on the 28th of May at 7:10 UCT PM, Universal Central Time. And it's going to be in the sign of Cancer right through to the 4th of August 2020. So this is just over 10 weeks. But ordinarily, Mercury takes just 21 days to work its way through each zodiac sign. So it's going to have a massive impact on us. And at the heart of this is, of course, a retrograde. So I want to explore what Mercury through Cancer means, the impact of the retrograde, but also the angles Mercury forges to other planets. Now, ordinarily, I would share an event chart for when this starts, but this is a little bit different because this goes on for quite some time. I'd just like to say that when the event begins, Mercury is quincunx Saturn, which can be challenging, but the Sun forges a terrific angle in Gemini with Uranus in the sign of Taurus, a semi-sextile. But the beginning of the journey is with Cancer at the Earth point, 0 degrees in Cancer. But before I get into it, I'd just like to say thank you for joining me. I'd love it if you would subscribe if you've yet to do so. Also, if you'd like to chat with me directly, you can do so on Twitter at Horoscope Ace. Also, if you've yet to tune into the Daily Astrology and Spiritual Show that my wife and I have been doing for just under a month, please see the playlist link beneath this video. You can get your free daily horoscope, plus I give you a flavour of what the key influences are on each day, and Elisa gives a more spiritual dimension for the day too. It's proving great fun, very popular, and we'd love to have you along. Also on this video, if you've got any comments, please share them. I interact with every single one. Now, I hope you're safe and well. And obviously the big thing we've all been grappling with this year has been COVID-19, both in terms of changes to our lifestyle, concern about health, but also concern about the financial implications too. So what's Mercury about? Well, Mercury governs two zodiac signs in Gemini and Virgo, so it's very much about communication. In the sign of Gemini, it's about quick communication, so it can be quick flashes. Text messages are classic Mercury in Gemini, but also we have instant messages these days. But Mercury in Gemini is very much to do with how we interact with our immediate surroundings. It's the sector of everyday communication. So saying hi to people on the street, or perhaps interacting with people in our community. It's about our relationships with siblings too. It's speedy, it's quick-witted, it likes gossip. It's flexible because, of course, Gemini is a mutable sign and it's governed by the element of air. So it flows very freely. Whereas on the other hand, Mercury in Virgo is very much about practicalities. It's about precision. It can be about health. It can be about providing services, but in a tangible way. We like to do things to support others through the guise of Virgo and therefore Mercury in a way which is supportive, helpful. So it's very much about how we interact with colleagues. It's about appointments. It can be about aunts and uncles. It can be about pets. But most of all, I think we know that Virgo is very much about organisation and about health. So that's how Mercury operates in the two signs it governs. Now, Mercury is also exalted in the sign of Aquarius, and it's in its detriment in the sign of Sagittarius. So how does it work out in the sign of Cancer? Well, Cancer is a cardinal sign, meaning it's one of the four leaders of the zodiac, the others being Aries, Libra, and Capricorn. And because Cancer is governed by the moon, people often think that Cancer people are just very much primarily focused on homemaking and anything to do with the more emotional dimension of life. Well, the latter may be true, but the former less so. I feel that Cancer people are often brilliant managers. Now that can be of the home, but it can also be of vast organisations, or it can be as a supervisor or a line manager. So Cancer people have a gift for management. But they are sensitive because of the moon rulership. But this cardinality cannot be underestimated. It's a very powerful sign. But also, Cancer people can be relatively reserved, sometimes extremely reserved about their own emotional feelings. Obviously, it depends on each Cancer person's exact natal horoscope. But privacy is a very big thing, and of course being aware of the environment. So the environment can be to do with the home, it can be to do with the family, but just as easily it can be to do with how we like to be in our environs at work. Or a Cancer person can walk into a restaurant and just feel the vibes aren't right, doesn't feel very comforting here, and they want to leave. I get it because I have draconic moon and Venus in Cancer, and also I have them in the 4th house, which is very Cancerian. So it's very much about feeling comfortable in one's environment. So if we take the clear logic of Mercury, which is very much about crisp precision and the exchange of ideas and interaction, how does that pan out in the sign of Cancer? Well, I think some people would say that the sensitivity of the moon can erode the objectivity of Mercury and therefore make it more subjective. But actually, if you've got Mercury in Cancer in your natal horoscope, the chances are that if you're involved in any kind of management, the way you write about it can be actually very articulate. Or if you were wanting to write a helpful note to someone, or you love poetry, or you're a writer, you can share your enthusiasm or your passion or your emotion through the prism of writing in an extremely skillful way. So I think it's a bit of a low shot to say that Mercury Cancer birth chart people have a kind of weakness here, but I think it can, if there are more challenging aspects to that position, perhaps for example through Saturn or Pluto, then that could definitely cause some inhibition, or perhaps see people be so sensitive that it does affect their logic and how they interact with others. But we need to think of the broadness of all zodiac signs and not just be focused on one slice. So the moon in Cancer, or Cancer people, can often be seen as people who are just chained to the kitchen sink making homemade apple pie, and whilst that may be true to a degree, it's not the total degree. It's much broader than that, much wider than that, and I think it kind of devalues zodiac signs to sort of see these things in such a narrow way. But when this transit takes place, we do have that angle with Saturn, which is a quincunx. So I do think that's going to provide a backdrop of energy. Saturn in Aquarius is kind of cool. It's detached. It is about community. It is about society. It's about us all. But it is kind of very logical. So that does pound away a little bit at the moon governed Mercury through Cancer transit. So I think we are going to be asked to try to retain the balance between the emotionality of Cancer and the detachment that comes from that Aquarius Saturn. But the semi-sextile between the Sun and Gemini and also Uranus suggests that Uranus is actually going to have a big impact on this Mercury transit through Cancer, and that would be exactly right, because in the first 10 days of June, Mercury is actually forging a brilliant angle to Uranus, and that points towards innovation. Because Uranus is in Taurus, which is Earth, and the role of Mercury in Cancer is water, and Earth carries water, I think we can see some innovation, and it could be linked to the impact that we have environmentally on our water assets. Now, one of the great news stories I've read recently to do with innovation is some of the big the big carbonated pop groups are actually creating plant-based bottles instead of plastic bottles. Now that kind of innovation really is exciting because it is going to have a really immediate effect. If you can cut down on plastic straws and all this kind of stuff, an immediate effect on the ocean, which of course Cancer governs. Cancer also governs, if you think about it, our immediate environment in nature. But also Mercury governs travel, doesn't it? Short-term travel usually, but also the arrangements for any kind of travel through emails or tickets or for shows. All these kind of things are going to come very much more sharply into focus. So I think the energy of Uranus suggests there can be new ways of being that do emerge. So that could be that we're going to have a partial unlocking of the lockdown in certain areas, but I still think that conjunction between Mars and Neptune in the second week of June, even if it hasn't seen an immediate spike of COVID, it could do 3 or 4 weeks hence, because that seems to be the propagation time for the virus. But what I would say is that by the 18th of June at 5:59 a.m. UCT, Universal Central Time, Mercury does go into a retrograde, but it starts the shadow period as soon as the 2nd of June. Now, of course, Mercury can control in travel and Cancer the seas and rivers and lakes, so there could be some kind of inhibition or some kind of issue that does have an impact on our oceans. Now, for example, perhaps cruise liners are going to want to start to get their operations going again. Now, I thought when COVID started and we had the cruise ship in Japan, I think it was initially, that was hit, that would certainly kill that sector for some while. But apparently there are still people that are keen to go and be packed in to these tight colossuses. It certainly wouldn't be my scene, but they may be in for a disappointment with this shadow period from the 2nd of June and the retrograde from the 18th, which lasts through to the 12th of July. It then comes out of shadow on the 26th of July. Now we also have 3 zodiac sign positions for the Sun through this Mercury transit. The first, of course, is Gemini. Then we're going to see the Sun move on the 20th of July into Cancer. We then have a very powerful solar eclipse on the 21st, which also forges a quincunx with Saturn. And then for the last 10 days of July and the first part of August, of course, the Sun will be in Leo. So that's going to have an impact too. And I think when the Sun is going through Cancer itself, that is going to be a critical time for when there can be delays or impositions that are more tricky to deal with. So, for example, Mercury retrograde, as we all know, can provide some glitches, some last-minute changes of plan. It can mean that communication breaks down. So family communication is going to require a great deal of care, I feel, through this particular transit. But also it can be a time to actually talk and catch up and get closer. One of the things that I find frustrating with some of the things that people claim about retrogrades is that you should never go to a meeting, you should never sign a contract. Well, the world can't just stop because of retrogrades, but what we must do is try to control the elements that are important to us in as finite a way as possible. So that means concentrating very carefully on documentation, checking that the other person has the same understanding as us, not taking shortcuts, not leaving things to chance, being very precise in all we do. And that can limit the damage that Mercury retrograde can have. In fact, in the last 10 days of July, Mercury is squaring up with Mars, which can create a lot of tension. Mars will, for the last 6 months of this year, from the 28th of June, be in its home zone of Aries, which is impulsive. So squaring up those last 10 days of July with Mercury suggests that that can be a time of great tension for the family dynamic, or anything that we need to discuss around more emotional issues. But also, the last 3 days of July do see Mercury forging a fab angle with Neptune. So if we want to embrace the higher part of ourselves, or the higher part of relating or spirituality, that's a great opportunity. However, it is in opposition to Jupiter the last 3 days of July, so that may give us a great desire to travel, but we need to make sure that it works for us. The first 4 days of August actually sees Mercury in direct opposition with strict Saturn, which rewinds back into Capricorn on the 2nd of July. So some kind of limitation right at the start of August, even though the shadow period is ended, even though the retrograde is no longer in operation, suggests there could be an issue. So how does this pan out in terms of each zodiac sign? So for Aries people, yes, I think the emotional part of your existence is something that is going to take a degree of care at this time. Of course, we'd all like to be with the people that we love and are close to, and it could be that if there are any restrictions, that's proven to be particularly frustrating. But the main thing for you is to ensure that the lines of communication are as open as possible. Now, Taurus, for you, Mercury is in the part of your horoscope to do with how you think and how you speak and how you articulate your ideas. So, very mercurial kind of energies. But it could be that a trusted piece of kit does actually go on the blink during this period of time. So if you have a household appliance that's been very reliable over a long period of time, it may be a good time to get it serviced. You may also decide that you want to improve your social media somehow. You may write a blog. You may find yourself really wanting to express yourself in a much more urgent way. However, for Gemini, this retrograde and the transit of Mercury, your ruler through Cancer, is very much about resources. Stay on the case. If anyone owes you any money, be very persistent in trying to get it back. And if you are buying anything, particularly a big ticket item, I would really scrutinise the receipt to make sure there's been no inadvertent mistakes. Now, for Cancer, this is a fascinating period of time because in some ways Mercury gives you an opportunity to come into the moment and think about what you want as an individual, but the gathering of energy at the outset of this is in a very reflective part of your scope. So perhaps there are things from your past that you're still mulling over, and then you're coming into the present trying to go forwards, but there could be something that's very important to you that just seems to be just a little bit out of your grasp, which could prove to be mightily frustrating. But the sun and the solar eclipse in your sign are going to give you an enormous lift from the 21st of June. So it's a matter of patience, and the passage of time do more than strength and fury. But maybe Mercury is pushing you to engage with other people a little bit more. But if someone feels that you haven't been doing that and you have been a little bit too inward, I do feel the early part of August could see quite a tense conversation happen, but maybe it needs to happen to clear the air. There is a tendency with Cancer people to bottle things up, to not let go of things, to hold on to things. People with Mercury in Cancer can often bear grudges, and Cancer people themselves often want to avoid confrontation, but that actually can see quite a lot of old anger stored up inside. So this would be a good time to release that anger and to get a little bit physically fitter too. Now Leo, Mercury's transit through the sign of Cancer could actually be quite complex for you. You're going to have a situation from the 28th of June through to about the time of your birthday where something from your past or your subconscious can call out to you in a much more potent way. Perhaps somebody is going to be in touch with you that you're not expecting. Perhaps someone you'd like to be in touch with you isn't in touch. There could be a sense of drift. You may find yourself wanting to withdraw into your shell a little bit, which of course is very unlike you. It will get a lot better once Mercury starts to go forwards, and of course once the Sun enters your sign in the last 10 days of July. So that's going to see us speeding up. But I certainly think from the 28th of June through to the end of the retrograde on the 12th of July, and probably about the week afterwards, there is going to be a real sluggishness. I think you could be hypersensitive. I think it's much more likely that you could feel very attuned to other people and pick up energy, but not necessarily the best of energies. So steer clear of anyone who's a bit of a gossip or tends to drain you or bring you down. But some secret fears and doubts could creep in, but the best way to deal with these is to embrace them warmly and to accept them rather than push them away and feel ill at ease with the more vulnerable side of your nature. Now Virgo, now for you, Mercury, your ruler, is in your sector of friendship through this transit, and if there are some friendships that aren't working very well for you, you may rethink some of them, or it could be your longer term plans that you want to refocus. For Libra, Mercury is moving through the part of your horoscope to do with your work, your career. If you have really been impacted by COVID-19, or your employer, or if you work for yourself, this could be a time when you're rethinking, and you may find that you come up with one or maybe more strategies which then don't actually go forwards to completion. Try to see this in as philosophical a way as possible. However frustrating it is, you will get there. I feel this is a process, and because Uranus anyway is shaking up your sector of how you earn money, and also because of Saturn and Pluto being in your sector of the home, it is possible that your frustration around the delays that Mercury can cause could be linked to the buying and selling of a property. Now Libra, do remember that even if there is that frustration, that doesn't mean to say that you still won't eventually ultimately make progress. When Mercury's retrograde, sometimes we do go up blind alleys, and that can seem to waste time, but that informs the final decision we make. So just see it as part of the process if that happens. Now for Scorpio, ironically, Mercury in this location is very much about travel, higher education, widening your horizons, being much more adventurous or independent minded. Now you can do some of those, but travel we just don't really know for sure, do we? It depends where we are in the world. But if you are talking about a contract of any kind, this is where attention to detail is going to be absolutely vital. Do not rush in where angels fear to tread. Now for Sagittarius, this Mercury transit goes through a very deep and profound part of your horoscope. If you've got a natural curiosity for life and death, for murder mystery novels, those kind of real life crime stories that they have on the satellite channels, you'll be really wrapped through this transit. But equally, you may find yourself delving even deeper into the world of psychology, astrology, or psychic phenomenon, because all of these can really help you to understand what's really going on deeper down beyond the more superficial level of relating. Now for Capricorn, this retrograde and the transit of Mercury through Cancer is in your sector of relating. The more that you can listen to other people, the more successfully you will negotiate this. Because of the cluster, the posse of planets that have been in your sign since the turn of the year, quite rightly you've been investing much more in your individual talent, your individual potential. But none of us is an island, and however much you're focusing very hard on important strands to you, the more connected you stay to others, even if you're just briefing them where you're up to, the better things are going to be around your relationships. But if there is a relationship where you feel someone's not understanding the profound changes that you've gone through, you can decide that it may be time to move on, to cut the strands of connection, and that can be emphasized more by that solar eclipse, which begins on the 21st and provides a backdrop of energy for the following 6 months. If there is a little bit of a a catch point between you and someone you're close to, it's almost bound to be based on money or differing values. Now, Aquarius, Mercury moving through the sign of Cancer is all about precision. It's about appointments. It's about work. It's about, as I said before, it can be about animals. It can be about health and fitness, but it also can be about our nervous system in a way, which is kind of governed by Mercury in Virgo. And what's important is that you retain that talent you have for looking at the big picture. If you get too caught up in one matter at a particular time, you could really get quite frustrated by the unfairness of something, but excluding the big picture that you're usually so skilled at embracing. So don't try to get too caught up in the details to the point that you're not staying that usual detached logical self of yours. Also, you may find that your energy generally is a bit more brittle, impatient, or even intolerant. So just be aware of that. Now, Pisces, this transit sees Mercury go through your sector of play, of sociability, of self-expression, and there could be an opportunity to meet someone romantically or socially on the back of this transit. But of course, with Mercury retrograde, there can also be last-minute changes as planned, disappointments because someone doesn't keep in touch as much as you would like, or perhaps you're going to change your mind and rethink something. With Saturn in your 12th solar house, whatever's going on in your love life, or about expressing yourself as a total being, you know, the things that your heart really wants to embrace, it has to be with a consciousness of the more psychological side of your nature. If you're a bit out of touch with the shadow side of your personality, then I do feel that Mercury retrograde can be a time for you to actually get much more into things, get much more aware, perhaps how other people see you as well. So you can have some fun conversations, and maybe there will be a little bit of a psychological undertone. Something linked to your past can still be playing out around your desires, around a romance at this time. So that summarizes the zodiac signs. So essentially what we've got with Mercury going through Cancer is lots of opportunities. There are some challenges. We mustn't think that the world is going to come to a grinding halt, but we can't either deny that we are then, as this begins, seeing Venus in retrograde, Jupiter, Saturn and Pluto all in retrograde as well. So it's retrograde season, things are slowing down. Mercury is about precision, it's about our communication, it's about not assuming things, it's about checking everything that we can personally influence. And we can still make progress on things. And crucially, it can be a great time to fix anything which isn't working very well. So you've got a sluggish computer, or you've got a Hoover that doesn't pick up the bits properly. This is a great time to mend, repair, and repurpose in a way which will be much more workable. But I do feel around the world we're going to see communicational issues that do influence anything to do with water, the seas, rivers, lakes. That's almost a certainty. If you'd like to have a one-to-one with me, please see the testimonials beneath this video. Or if you have yet to ascend into more serious astrology and know more about your zodiac sign, but you'd like to take that step, why not check out my personal horoscope reports below? There's an offer, 30% off. They are very affordable and very good. They give you a real foundation and provide so much information of what really makes you tick, give you lots of ideas of how you can seek out opportunities to grow and evolve in this life. But for now, it's been a real pleasure being with you. Good luck, take care, and goodbye.